Duh.
Action. Hello, Sydney. I am your ghost face with the most face. Ladies and gentlemen, K-Swope. Hopefully you guys are having yourselves a great day. Diving into my review of Scream 3. How this is going to work is like this. We're going to talk about the good things about the movie, the bad things about the movie, have some notes at the end, and then give it a rating on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 being stepping on a Lego brick quality, 10 being Citizen Kane quality. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Let's dive in. Good stuff. First things first, every Scream film, they have a bunch of new actors and new people popping in here and there, guest stars. And I gotta say, two of my favorite Patricks in the showbiz are in this film. For one, Patrick Dempsey, okay, who I also talked about in Dexter Original Sin. Check out my Dexter reviews right here, right? Great stuff, great stuff. In this film, he is also joined by Patrick Warburton, okay, who is the guy that you might not know, you may not have seen him anywhere, but you've definitely heard him. Family Guy, Kim Possible, just to name the two ones that pop into my head immediately, Principal Barkin and that guy in the wheelchair at Family. I don't watch Family Guy, so I have no idea. But either way, yeah, he's in this. Super iconic voice, and so it's really, really fun seeing him in this film as well. So that's a good thing. Another good thing is, I don't know if you watched my Scream 2 review or not, but you probably should go do that, so there it is. But I expressed being disappointed that Randy died, okay? Because Randy, everyone loves Randy, okay? However, they do have a nice cameo from Randy in this film. He recorded a video diary that they get to see before he bit the dust in the last film, talking about film trilogies, okay? And how things kind of change for them sometimes and things like that. So I appreciated seeing Randy again. I like that they had an excuse to bring him back. Lovely guy. But that's not where cameos end, because Carrie Fisher also cameos, okay? It is kind of a corny cameo, I think, personally. She's playing a person who looks like Carrie Fisher, but did not get the role of Princess Leia because she chose not to sleep with the director.
George Lucas.
Yeah.
He's the main character in Star Wars. He kissed his sister.
Okay, I get it, but like, I don't know. I think it was corny, kind of dumb, to be quite honest. But speaking of sleeping with the director, that brings me to my next good point, is I love how they really shine a light on the just trashy side of Hollywood directors, producers, casting couch type of business. They really spent a lot of time talking about that in this film. I think that's good, because that stuff is obviously deplorable and terrible. And so anytime someone wants to bring attention and light to it, that's great. So either way, it's good to shine light on dark issues like that. And so it's fun to see. Very appreciated that. I will say, this film also, compared to the 3 Scream films we've watched already, it probably has the second most exciting third act after the first film, okay? Because the first film's third act was iconic, okay? So we don't need to talk about that. This one's was also really, really interesting, because they're in the mansion, Ghostface is around, they're kind of all, they're not really stuck in there, but I don't know why they just don't leave, so I don't know about that. But either way, it's thrilling, it's fun to watch, there's a lot of cool things that happen during that sequence. It's kind of long too, but the third act is definitely probably my favorite part of this whole movie. But if you know anything about the Scream franchise, you know that Scream 3 is probably the most hated of the entire franchise, to which I'm probably going to have to agree. And so that concludes the good section, moving into the bad section. A lot of stuff to go through here. For one, Ghostface, he always has the voice changer to give him the iconic Ghostface voice. However, they've got like a magic voice changer that can basically change your voice into anybody's. And for one, it's already a bit of a stretch, the voice changer, because if you know anything about voice changers in practicality, unless they're going straight through like a computer to be digitally changed, portable handheld ones, they don't work that well. So with all that being said, it should make sense to you that it's already a stretch of the imagination for one of these to work generally. But then you have one in this film that is just willy-nilly turning into everybody's voices, and that's way too much. You're taking something that's already sort of a stretch, and then you're taking it much further. But there's something else that should have come down much further, and that of course was Gale's bangs, because Gale's bangs, I'm not the first YouTuber to talk about this. I know there's many YouTubers who have talked about this very same thing before, but either way, I would be mistaken to just not mention how bad the hair looks in this. I don't know what Courtney Cox's people were up to. I know there's a story behind that, but that's bad. That's like easily the worst haircut in a film I think I've ever seen, to be quite honest. Which that kind of brings me into another thing with this whole film generally. I realized in my reviews, I swear I neglected to talk much about the main characters, to be quite honest. The main characters of the Scream franchise, the 3 tentpoles, are Dewey, Gale and Sydney, right? Sydney we talked about. She's still the main character. She's still the main focus of the film. We talked about her a lot more in the first film, a little bit in the second film. In this film, she takes a major back seat, and most of the action's going on with Dewey and Gale. Now, Dewey and Gale have had this on and off kind of relationship thing for a while because she was very smitten with him, but it was probably just because she was a journalist to get information out of him in the first Scream film. And then the second Scream film, there's that tension because of how everything went in the first film and after the first film. And then they do actually get together, and it seems like, somewhat of a happy ending, and I'm not complaining about it. I think it's all, fine and dandy how they ended things in Scream 2 with that relationship. But then they're broken up again in this film, and it's just the on and off is just getting so annoying. We'll put it like that. It's like I don't watch these films because I care about these characters' relationships, okay? It's because I want to know who Ghostface is and why he's doing what he's doing, right? But I will say Dewey is the GOAT, okay? He is a police officer who was from Woodsboro, who's basically been in it to win it through the end with everything going on with all the ghost faces and all the Scream stuff. So he's a real troop. I do like Dewey. Sydney is kind of all right. She was really good as the final girl in the first film. In the second film, I have mixed feelings because she was a very bad girlfriend. And then in this film, she's not even hardly in the first half of the movie. Like, she's there, but she's completely inconsequential to the plot for the most part. And it's kind of puzzling because they spent so much time with Dewey and Gale and stuff and the Hollywood people. And the first half of the movie just doesn't do anything to excite me or make me more interested in the plot, which is very, very sad. Something else that's sad I got to bring up, though, is these films, they have a great tendency to be meta and commentate on the genre as a whole for horror, okay? And this film falls the most flat in doing that because it really does not provide any meta commentary about movies at all, to be quite honest. And not to mention, Randy in his video cameo, he's talking about the whole trilogy idea and how the rules are different if there's a trilogy, right? Because these films were meant to be a trilogy and just end there until Scream 4 came out, which we'll talk about later. But the trilogy rules that Randy talks about, I don't follow. I really don't think that they make sense because I've not noticed these. You mentioned in horror movies and then sequels. I see that. That makes sense to me when Randy was talking about them in the previous two films. This does not. I don't really see what they mean when they're talking about the trilogies. A lot of trilogies are not planned. Some are. But, the only trilogy I can think of that kind of sort of followed the rules that he talked about was the original Star Wars trilogy. So, I don't know. That, again, it just really fell flat for me. I really did not get that, and it was very disappointing. So now we got to talk about one of the elephants in the room, and that, of course, being the character of Roman, okay? Now, Roman's a very interesting character because he is the singular Ghostface in this film, which is the first time we've seen that in the Scream franchise, and the only time we're going to see that thus far in the Scream franchise. I don't know what Scream 7 has in store for us, but maybe we'll see. So at this party, Roman fakes his death, and in the very next scene, meanwhile, might I say, he fakes his death in the basement, and then the very next scene upstairs, we see Ghostface chasing somebody. There is literally no way that Roman could have faked his death, gotten out of it, and then thrown the Ghostface costume on, ran upstairs in time to do all that. There was just not enough time. That's just complete phony baloney garbage. So I don't know what the heck is up with that. I also think it is so weird, dumb, and stupid that Roman is revealed to be Sydney's long-lost brother, okay? So here's kind of how it goes. For those of you guys who might not believe me or haven't seen the film, first of all, what are you doing here? Second of all, stick around, it'll be fun. But here's what happens. So Roman is the son of Sydney's mom, okay? She went out to Hollywood. She was abused and made to do things by producers and directors and things like that while she was there. She, of course, conceived and then gave birth to Roman, kind of left him behind and kind of ran off to start a new life, okay? Roman apparently reached out to Sydney's mom, aka his mom, just to try to reconcile, and she didn't want anything to do with him, okay? And then that was his motivation for everything. And he is revealed to be the person that showed the proof and the evidence to Billy and Stu, which would cause them to want to do all of the things that they did in the first Scream film and before the first Scream film, meaning offing Sydney's mom and then going on their killing spree, okay? I think this twist is utterly stupid. I think that they could have done so much better. I don't think it's bad in concept, but I also feel like they should have teed it up a little bit. It just feels so out of nowhere, and no one could guess that or see that coming for a long shot, okay? And in a good whodunit, you should be able to put the pieces together as you're watching it. And if you're smart enough, be able to call, or at least mostly call, what's going to happen, what's going to take place. There's no room for that, because that is just a so out of pocket, out of left field thing. No one would have come to that conclusion by the end of the film without it being spelled out for them. So that's bad. Now back to Roman's motivation, though, with, the mother thing. It's almost good, okay? And I say it's almost good because if what I just talked about, the setup, would have worked, would have been better, they would have, been teasing that in some way, shape, or form throughout earlier in this film or the previous Scream films, then I think it would have worked quite well. However, they didn't do that, and as a result, it does not work quite well, which is very, very disappointing. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to move into the notes section. And as I mentioned before, this was supposed to be the finale of the Scream franchise. I'm glad it wasn't, because this would be a very sour note to end on, because it wasn't very good. And so that is that. But you can see that throughout the film and how they're talking, especially with Randy's cameo and the trilogy thing. So I'm glad they decided against that, but it did take them like a good, I think 10 plus years, if I'm not mistaken, between Scream 3 and Scream 4. I also got to point out, Cotton Weary dies. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about that. In case you don't know, Cotton Weary is the person who was cheating on Sydney's mom. And then after Sydney's mom died, he was accused of, going stabby to her, and he didn't do it. And so he's kind of been a recurring character throughout the trilogy. And so he is the first victim in this film during the big opening sequence. And I don't really feel any particular way about it. I don't know if I'm supposed to or not, but it's there. There was also, I mentioned cameos before too. It's not a good cameo, but not a bad one either. As I'm sure you know, Jay and Silent Bob are in this film. For what reason, you might ask? I have no idea. But it is certainly interesting. We'll put it like that. Actually, I do know the reason, come to think of it, because I think in the same studio setting or whatever, they were filming the end of Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, and I think someone cameoed. So they exchanged cameos in films, I think it was. I think, did Wes Craven even cameo? He may have. I don't remember. But either way, yeah, there were some cameos exchanged there. That's why he shows up in this film, but it's still really, really weird to see, okay? It just feels really out of place. But that is Scream 3 for you, ladies and gentlemen. Before I give you my review, let me know in the comments what you thought of Scream 3. What did you think it lands amongst the other Scream films? If you were to rate them, how would you do that? Very curious to know those kind of things. And let me know if you disagree with any of my points too. That would also be very, very helpful. So let me know. I'd love your insight in the comments. And hey, if you've liked this video, want to see more just like it for other movies and the rest of the Scream franchise, I'm working my way through them right now. We started with Scream 1 a while ago. We did Scream 2 last week. We're doing Scream 3 now. And we're going to keep things going. Scream 4, 5, 6, and then Scream 7. Looking forward to that one as well. We'll be doing reviews for all of them. So hit that subscribe. Don't look back. But I'm going to rate this film. I think Scream 3 definitely deserves a 4, to be quite honest. Again, it's really weak. I feel like it kind of tries to jump the shark and fails, which is a weird thing if you sit and think about it. Because it would make sense if they were trying to jump the shark with this being the last film. It would make a lot of sense because it's the last film, okay? Because that's what it was planned to be. But they tried, and they just didn't come out very good. And I don't know how to describe it other than just disappointing. Meaning that it did nothing for me. All I could do was watch certain things, and I'm like, yeah, right. And to be honest, I've actually seen this film only once in full. I started watching it when I was first watching through the Scream movies. Got bored halfway through, stopped, didn't pick it up, and then I just went on to Scream 4. So this time watching was my first full watch through of Scream 3. So, fun fact for you. But that's going to wrap things up for me today, ladies and gentlemen. I, of course, am K-Swope. See you in the next video when we talk about Scream 4. Super excited for that one. But, of course, in the meantime, I am K-Swope, and although this movie might be scary, don't forget that Jesus still loves you, and I will see you in the next one.